saw who would choose him, and therefore he predetermined how their end would be. Am I making myself clear? Now, here's the problem. Neither one of those is right, and neither one of those is wrong in and of themselves. You have to have Bible to support them. The thing that I have tried to get us to understand since I came here is that in the context of my soul salvation, yes, the work that was all sufficient to save me was done by Christ, was engineered by God. It was performed by him. But that my thank you to him is incumbent upon myself. Am I making myself clear? And if I don't have a thank you, then maybe I don't have what I think I have. Now there's an instance where Jesus, he healed 10 lepers. Y'all remember that? And in the healing of the 10 lepers, only one came back and said thank you. And then the question is begged that the 9 were Jews, and the one might have been Samaritan. There's a question. But the point of reference is that were they healed? Yes. But did they recognize God in their healing? No. What am I talking about? And I'm going to come to something in a minute that we listened to yesterday. When you look at what God has done for you, and I'm talking about when you look at what God has done for you, and you know that you're not worthy, but God has done it anyway. And come on, don't tell me about you went online and you applied for a job. And so you're the one working every day. Because I got a Bible verse for that. The Bible verse for that says is that promotion cometh neither from the east, nor the west, nor the south. God is the judge. He setteth up one and putteth down another. So God let you, God picked you, God gave you that job. Don't think your intelligence, your ingenuity, your politicking, your whatever else got you that job. If the Lord had not been on your side, you would not have gotten that job. So God used that job to provide a roof over your head. He predestined that you got that job. He predetermined that when you went online looking for a job, the job was there. And he whispered in your ear to fill in and click that button. And you clicked that button, and then the angel that was with you made sure that that application got to the right somebody. Because, see, there's more than one person sitting at a computer trying to determine looking at applications. And so this person that looked at your application looked favorably. Well, if it had went to that person over there, they'd have kicked it in the trash can. Y'all ain't heard a word I just said. Why do I say that? Because when you look at Ephesians chapter 4, it says, having predestined us to adoption as sons by Christ, or Jesus Christ to himself, according to the good pleasure of his will. Then go down to verse 9, having made known to us the mystery of his will concerning to his good pleasure, which he purposed in us. Y'all see that? Then go to verse 11. In him also we have obtained an inheritance, being predestined according to the purpose of him who works all things according to the counsel of his will. Y'all see that? Which then means that everything has been working out because he predetermined everything to work out for you, because he looked at you a long time ago when you didn't even know you were on the scene. You hadn't even got on the horizon, and he knew how your heart was going to respond to him, and therefore he allowed, oh, help me, Holy Spirit. He allowed You don't think he allows? Y'all remember, fella, we talked about him a few months ago, Daniel? He allowed Daniel to go in the lion den. And he also allowed that the lions would not bother Daniel. And he also allowed for the king to not sleep all night long worrying about Daniel. And he also allowed that when the king got up that morning, as soon as he could come, he hollered, Daniel, oh Daniel. And Daniel responded, O king, live forever. I'm still here. My God has. Yahweh has. And then so the king said, well, get Daniel out. And so then the other accuser said, well, somebody must have fed the lions. And so then the king said, okay, well, if somebody fed the lions, here, y'all go down there and take your families with you, because obviously you have falsely accused him, because his God, you got to remember, I keep telling y'all this ever since I started this, in the minds of folks, victory comes to you solely and wholly by what? God's purpose. Every war that has been fought has been a war fought by the purpose or the destiny, if you will, of the gods. Now, fatalism says that in the context of my life, it doesn't matter what I do, because my end is already determined and I got no help or no hope. It's just going to be what it's going to be. Fatalism is a death march to hell. Fatalism is a philosophy that is primed in Greek mythology. Fatalism is akin to the fact that in the Greeks, unless you were a hero, you couldn't become a demigod. The only way to be a hero was to be a child of a human and a god. So if you were not a child of a human and a god, then you were lost in the sea of souls. That was it. It didn't matter what you accomplished. If you couldn't get to the status of a hero or a demigod, then you could not get out of the sea of souls. That's why Jason and the Argonauts, that's why the trials of Hercules, all of those events are events for that hero to prove himself worthy to become a demigod and then be ushered into the pantheon of gods. Now, there are those who will tell you that Christianity and Jesus is the same thing. No, it's not. You want to know why? One point of reference is that in Greek mythology, the hero is half God and half human. Jesus is 100% God and 100% human. That's a huge difference. Jesus is already God. He's not trying to become God. He's trying to save mankind from the sea of souls. Am I reaching anybody? Am I helping y'all? Now, one of the things you don't realize is most of the stuff that comes out in Hollywood is philosophical and mythological in all of its presentations. The stuff like, oh, what is the one? The Star Wars, yes. Star Wars' main premise is dualism. You always must have an equal opposite, a yin and a yang, which is Korean mythology as well. Then you also have Star Trek, which is entirely different. Star Trek doesn't deal with a yin and a yang. Star Trek deals with humanism as the apex. And then you have the other quote-unquote aliens, which have also humanistic characteristics, but they are a step below the humans. Because you always see the humans in charge. And then you always notice that the humans are always Caucasian. At least Paul is enjoying this sermon. The rest of y'all looking like, oh, this lesson. So now, You are, because God knew that you would. Did y'all get that? Let me see. Mama has 3 kids, and she and Daddy during Christmas are going to go Christmas toy shopping for the kids. Excuse me. This happened in my life, so I'm not telling you something and she told us, y'all stay home, obey your grandmama, clean up your rooms. You need to clean out your sock drawers. You need to clean out your chest of drawers. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Clean out your closet. When you get through cleaning that out, go in there in the kitchen and help your grandmama clean out the cabinets. Because y'all don't remember like I remember, but Mama and them used to go in the kitchen before Thanksgiving or before Christmas, and the pots and pans, everything had to come out because they had sat there a while. They had got dusty. Help me, somebody. Didn't know if any roaches had been through there or not. So you had to bring all of that out and wash that. Am I right or wrong, somebody? And I don't remember us having no washing machine back in the 60s. No, not washing machine, but dishwasher back in the 60s. I remember me standing up in the kitchen at the kitchen sink. And we didn't have Dawn back then. And the imprint was, if we behave, Santa Claus was going to be. But Mama and them already knew who was going to. They already knew who was going to cooperate and who wasn't going to cooperate and who was going to make a tough time of it. They already knew, because when they came home, they said, I knew you wasn't going to do right. Because they had been with us all of our, and they knew our traits and our habits and our responses, and they knew how we were going to act, even when they told us, y'all didn't hear the word I just said. They knew how we were each individually going to respond. God, way back before there was, knew how everybody coming through, before they even got here, how they were going to respond. Am I making sense? I keep saying that. Now, the issue is, how do you respond? Do you respond according to your pleasure or his pleasure? Your purpose or his purpose? Your will or his will? Because if you go back to them verses, verse 5, according to the good pleasure of his will. Verse 9, according to his good pleasure which he purposed in himself. And verse 11, according to the purpose of him who works all things according to the counsel of his will. Y'all see that? Everything that you do, he's already knows. We have a perfect example when Jesus says, not my will, but thy will be done. But Jesus was selfless. We have agendas. And what has to come forward is we have to be willing, in the context of the agenda, to let it not be our agenda, but let it be his agenda for his purpose, for his good will. Now, if it's predetermined for his purpose and his good will, then there's a thought process that says, I'm involved. You are not a robot. You are not an automaton. God knows what you're going to do, but he doesn't interfere with you doing it. There's another Bible verse, a story. Jesus said there were 2 sons. One son came to the father, and the father said, look, go out there in the field and work. And the son said, no, I ain't going. Then the other son comes to the father, and the father says, go out in the field and work. And he says, okay, Dad. The one that says, okay, Dad, has no intention of going and does not go. The one that says, I ain't going, gets convicted, turns around, and goes. The question is asked, which one obeyed the father? The one that said yes and didn't do, or the one that said no and did do? Now, having said that, you have to comprehend that God knows all about you, like your mama and them. He knew what you was and wasn't going to do. When he asked you, when he gave you the opportunity, he already knew how you were going to respond. Now, my mama and them said about me, Tamika, they used to say, now Tony is a good boy. He just want to do it his way. Now, if you tell him to go do something, he'll do it, but it's going to be two things. One's going to be in his time, and two is going to be his way. Y'all didn't get that. So what they would do is they'd let me know in advance what they wanted me to do. They knew it was going to get done, but they let me know well enough in advance to get it done so that I wouldn't not get it done before they wanted it. In other words, they might tell me the night before, we want you to do this, that, and the other thing tomorrow because we got company coming at 4 o'clock, and we don't want the yard looking bad. So now, that meant I could get up at 6 o'clock and do it, or I could get up at 8 o'clock and do it, or I could get up at 10 o'clock and do it. But they knew one thing was going to happen. I was going to get up and do it. Sometimes I'd get up early and get it done and get it out of the... God knows, just like your mom and them knew about you, everything that you were going to do, and he has given you the leeway to do it, but it's still going to be for his, according to his purpose and will. That's why you have to do stuff you do, and you need to stop making choices, because as you make choices, you make yourself vulnerable. Remember, I always say, once saved, always saved, but you better make sure you're saved. Because sometimes you can go through the motions, and the lack of effort exposes the intent of heart. The lack of effort exposes the intent of the heart. You remember Bishop Sanders preached a sermon on Manchester and Fifth Avenue about food? Food. He said that you can tell whether your wife loves you or not by whether she just throws something together and give it to you, or she go in the kitchen and put forth the effort and energy to make you a good meal. Whether she makes you some real cornbread or buy you some cornbread or make you some Jiffy cornbread, especially if you don't like Jiffy, but you want some real cornbread. Or she throw you some baked beans together instead of putting you some peas and some carrots. Y'all know what I'm talking about. The effort determines or shows the intent of the heart. I can do this to you. What time you got to be at work? Don't answer the question. Just think about this. What happens when you don't get to work on time? Can you afford not to get to work on time? So then why going to work is more important than coming to worship? And I'm not picking on anyone. I'm just giving you an example in the context of your intent of heart and determined effort work hand in hand. One thing I know I can depend on, whether Minnie Lee want to be here or not, she has proven to me that she's what? Here. I can only think of a few times Minnie Lee has been absent in my 20-something years. When I first came here, she used to work some Sundays. So she would come to the first service. Then when she retired, she always came to church unless she was going to Mississippi to see her sisters or Atlanta to see her sister. Am I making myself clear? Then she would go to Mississippi for a class reunion, or she'd go back when somebody passed. I'm only using Minnie Lee because she just happened to pop into my head. It does not include or exclude anybody else in this room. The point I'm trying to make is that your actions, Mom and them said, speak louder than your, which goes back to the two sons when the father asked them to go to the field. It wasn't the words, it was the actions that sealed the deal. Now, if this were a situation where you were a robot, then you would have no control over anything you do. Flip Wilson used to say in his comedic routine, "The devil made me do it." The truth of the matter is, the devil has not made anyone do anything. The truth of the matter is, you do what your flesh and you agreed to do. The devil don't have to do nothing. You ain't Jesus. He ain't tempting you. You skipping through the tulips to do what you do. Because if you were not in agreement with doing the do that you do, it wouldn't be so hard to stop doing the do that you do. The devil don't have to put no reins on you. He don't have to instigate you. Your flesh is already leading. You just looking for an opportunity to do what your flesh wants to do. And when the opportunity shows up, it ain't a heartbeat away. Thank you, Frida. At least you saying amen. God has to purpose in you to get you to do the right thing. One of the most peculiar phenomenons that ever occurred to me in life after having come from the Rust Belt of Detroit, Michigan, where the winter temperatures were frigid beyond your imagination, where for a week to 10 days every winter, the weather would get to, the high would be 0. And the low would be minus 45 or 54, somewhere down there, without the wind chill, thank you. And in the process, most folks didn't even try to go to work. They would just basically shut the city down. You don't know anything about this, but there were steam pipes that ran through the streets underneath ground on all major streets in Detroit. And if you ever look at the movie, what is that, Beverly Hills Cop, the first one, you will see that when they show the streets, you'll see steam coming up through the manholes in the streets. That is because that was necessary to keep the streets from freezing solid and the pipes underground from bursting, and still pipes would burst. But people would get up and go to work. They'd get up and go shopping. They'd get up and go to the basement to the neighbor's house to have a house party. And guess what else they got up to go to? Church! And I come out here, and the sun is hiding behind a cloud. And a Negro says to me, it look like it's going to rain, so I won't be there today. The rain hadn't dropped yet, but it looked like. And so I had thought I had come to the Oz. Y'all know Oz, right? Well, when the water gets on the witch, she melts. Folks told me with square faces, rigid jaws, and no hesitation, if it's raining, I ain't coming. You have to make a choice. Your free will, your determinate free will that God gives you, allows you have to make a choice. Repeatedly it says you were predetermined. The predetermination meant that your life is an honor to him, but you still made choice. And in the context of making that choice, you continue to make that choice. Every opportunity you have to sin is a choice. Some sins should kind of, as the older you get, they should kind of fall. Y'all don't hear me. I was looking on Facebook and came across one of those ads. And the ad was about clothing. And it had men and women clothing. But it was suggestive clothing. And I looked at it and I thought, I said, once upon a time. See, y'all don't know what I'm talking about, but back in the 70s, in the early 70s, there were men clothing where we used to wear platform shoes, and we'd have high-waisted belted pants with long legs and bell-bottom bottoms. Somebody remember them? But across here, it was kind of snug. And the reason it was snug was to advertise. Y'all ain't heard a word I just said. And my daddy and my daddy's mama used to get mad at me for wearing that type of clothing. Talking about I was ashamed. Didn't no man need to dress like that. That's what my grandmama said. You're going to catch something you can't get? I'm trying to get you to understand. I don't dress like that. And the truth of the matter is, if it went out of style, it's trying to come. My mama used to tell my sister, you keep dressing like that, not my mama, my grandmama, my mama's mama, you're going to get pleurisy. Y'all young folks don't know what pleurisy is. But the old folks would tell you it's a cold that won't go away. But now my sister, she's all covered. Some things just ought to fall off. Because if you're saved, then there is an activity that's supposed to take place. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become. There's an understanding of life. That's why some people, when teased or concerned about Aaron, that he's kind of young. But I kind of think, one, he's an older soul. And two, He's not as moved by the stuff that's out there like so many of his peers are moved. I credit that with the grip that his mama got. But the point of reference is that's the way all of us old folks wish, because some of the mistakes we made back yonder, if somebody had, we wouldn't have made them. Somebody had said, no, you don't need to go there. The trouble that was there would never have latched on to us. Predetermined in that God allowed my choice to choose the invitation that was already extended by him. That when I heard the call, he knew I was going to respond. Now, that's basically the sermon, but I want to add this onto it. It was predetermined that I was coming to St. Paul. Y'all didn't get that. Because it was for his purpose and his glory. It was predetermined that Aduna was going to be the one that called me after having talked to Dr. E.V. Hill, T.J. Jemison, and a little old lady by the name of Grace Cobb, to prepare the way for when his call came in, my mind would be receptive to his purpose and will. When Chairman Aduna called, he wasn't calling necessarily for me. He was calling because I was the editor of the National Baptist Voice, and he wanted to put an ad in the Voice and wanted to know how much it would cost to put an ad in the Voice, because St. Paul was looking for a pastor. When he said to me the name of the church, it clicked. Why? Because when Dr. E.V. Hill was in Detroit running revival, as I was the editor of the National Baptist Voice, it was my responsibility to always go to those events when national leaders came into Detroit. Y'all with me? So I went to the revival, and after the revival, they had dinner for Dr. Hill and me and a couple of others, and so we went to the dinner, and while we were eating, Dr. E.V. Hill says to me, buddy, because he knew me, because I was the editor of the Voice. But everybody knew me because I was up and coming. He says, buddy, there's a church in Los Angeles around the corner from me that needs a pastor. And I think you would be the man for the job. And in my stupidity, responded to Dr. Hill, well, Dr. Hill, thank you, but the Lord hadn't told me I need to go anywhere. He says, buddy, the Lord is talking through me to you. I said yes to Dr. Hill. Not long thereafter, I was at another luncheon, and I was eating with Dr. T.J. Jemison and Dr. Franklin Richardson, who were the president of the National Baptist Convention and the general secretary of the National Baptist Convention. And Dr. Jemison says, Ward, there's a church in Los Angeles that needs your talents. I said, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. He says, you need to look into it. Yes, sir. Remember I said the young man said yes, but didn't do? That was me. Then there was a lady by the name of Grace Cobb. Grace Cobb came to my installation along with Beverly Lee. Grace Cobb had a daughter, she's passed now, that was going to Trinity. Grace Cobb used to have a school in the Bahamas that she would do events for to raise money, and I would always give her money to give to this school. Am I making myself clear? I was her moderator. She said to me, she says, Pastor, brother moderator, you have done all you can do in Detroit. You're not going to be able to do anything else in Detroit. Rehoboth Baptist Church had one city block for the church in the parking lot, another city block for the gymnasium in the parking lot, another city block across the street that was just empty that we hadn't determined what to do with yet, and another 2 city blocks in another location in the city that we had an office building at that we turned around and gave to another church so that they could utilize it. That's what I was doing in Detroit. Deacon Aduna can attest to that. Taking that into consideration, I'm listening, but I'm really not paying attention. Then she says, there's a church in Los Angeles. The Bible says where there are 2 or 3 witnesses, let everything be done by 2 or 3 witnesses. So when Deacon Aduna called, I had already been prepared, but I had not done, because, you know, I do things when is this all coming together for y'all? But it was already it's just that the Lord had to do a little more. So when Deacon Aduna called, and we talked, I said to him, well, could I submit a resume? Because there were 2 churches in Los Angeles that were vacant at the time. Messiah was also vacant. But Messiah wasn't the one that was around the corner from Dr. Hill's church. Y'all with me? He says, yes, but you have to hurry up because we're fixing to close the window. Am I right, Chairman? So I sent all of the stuff that he said I needed to send. The next day, express mail. Maureen got it in the... So by then, they had already decided that they were going to go with their first group. And the first group was Dr. Reverly from Detroit, Dr. Doctor from Tacoma, Washington. Tacoma, Washington, I forgot his name. Washington is his name too? Okay, and then there was another preacher, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who is now pastor in Detroit, by the way. So, y'all remember, I said it had to be predetermined according to his. So, in the first vote, they had Reverly and the gentleman from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but they didn't have enough for a majority, so they dropped the guy from Tacoma and voted again, and Reverly lost by 1 vote or 2 votes to the guy from Harrisburg. I don't know how Annie Rogers got involved, but Annie Rogers got involved, and Annie Rogers she worked on the National Devotional Committee with Grace Cobb from Detroit, who was the lady that told me I had done everything I can do in. Y'all ain't heard a word. I'm trying to show you how it's God's predetermined will works, even though you don't realize it's working. So then the call to the Harrisburg gentleman was rescinded. It wasn't enough folks enamored with Reverly and his African clothing and saying that you had to pay for him to go to Africa twice a year. So then they threw all 3 of them out and opened up the next batch, which was me and a guy from New York City named Williams. Now, in the meantime, I had prayed, Lord, if you don't want me involved in this, make it easy. Don't let them even entertain me to preach. If you want me involved in this, that I'm going to be the pastor, let them invite me to preach so that when I go there, I already know that that's where I'm going to be. Y'all still with me? So, they send the committee out, Deacon Aduna, Brother Boss, Wendell Warden, and Howard Johnson. Well, not Wendell, Howard Johnson, Lucille Arthur. That was that committee that came to me. And when they came, I had on coveralls, and I was helping to work building the gymnasium on the interior. They heard me preach at Reveley's church at the 8 o'clock service and my church at the 11 o'clock service. Because God is. In the meantime, unbeknownst to me, when they're at Messiah, they're asking everybody at Messiah, you know any dirt on this dude? What's the story on him? And they say, he all right. God's plan for me and God's plan for St. Paul had, but prior to this, been on two different roads. But now guess what? They're on the same one-way road. So that when I'm extended the invitation to come out here to preach on the 5th Sunday in September of 1996, because I believe that God does hear and answer my prayer, I already knew that I was what? Coming. Did I know what was going to be involved in coming? Because there's a reality that says that's not static in our lives. That's only static in God's understanding of the situation. It's fluid in our lives because we still have a choice to make. But he already knows that we're going to make. In other words, what's determined here for him is because he knows all, he knows the potentialities of all, but it's still undetermined to us because we have the right of free will. But because he knows what our free will is, he knows what we're going to. But that does not interfere with us from doing it. But still, he allows us to mosey on. So every mistake I have made, guess what? He knew from before. But he's been working it out for his good pleasure according to his will. Does that make sense? And our road, as of yet, has not come to. I was thinking this morning when I was between the bathroom and the bedroom, and the thought came to me, and I'll leave y'all with this for today. Too much and too many. Too much and too many. And it said afterwards, you had too much money and too many doubters. Y'all get that? Had too much money and too many doubters. In other words, there was too much money for Negroes to brag about. And there were too many Negroes that didn't want anything to happen and wanted failure so they could get the credit or they could come in and fix it. It looks like we may have finally gotten past that point. Because the Bible says, write the vision down and make it plain. So Friday and Saturday, I'm praying, and I started writing what I figured the vision ought to be for St. Paul for the future. And do y'all know some of the stuff that we said we were going to do 20 years ago still popped back in my head. So I wrote it down, and I got a list of 13 items. And one day up the road, I'll share them with you. And everything on that list for us to do, we cannot do in and of ourselves. If we don't have, as my old pastor used to say, a divine intervention, if we don't have a miracle from God, we ain't going to be able to do nothing that's on that list. But if we get a divine intervention from God and we're able to do those things on the list, even half of them, and have a long plan for somebody to come behind us to do some other, then that means that it was predetermined by God at such a place and time as this, for his glory, for his purpose, for his will. That's the sermon for today. Everybody here a member but the one lady, and I ain't going to try to steal her from her church yet. But if she do wind up joining, it's because of her free will and God's predetermined purpose. All hearts and minds are clear. You know the announcements are Wednesday. If there's a change on Wednesday, I will get it out. If there's not a change on Wednesday, then be in prayer for Wednesday. We go to trial. I don't know if the trial will be in the morning or in the afternoon. More likely than not, it'll probably be about the morning and continue over into the afternoon. But I will let everybody know so that those of you that can come will come, and those of you that can't will at least pray. Amen.